Welcome to the RePsychled podcast, where we discuss everyday issues from a mental health perspective. We are your hosts, Dr. Rashonda Strickland,
Dr. LaFanya Jones-Hines,
and Dr. Nichelle Wall. Now, don't get it twisted. We're not going to be your stereotypical therapist.
What we will be is informative, down to earth, a little spicy, and vulnerable.
All right, interns, turn up your volume, grab your pen and paper. It's supervision time. As a reminder, this podcast is not meant to take the place of a relationship with a licensed mental health professional.
Welcome back to session 67, The Puppet Master.
Okay, interns. Today, we're going to be talking about Narcissistic Personality Disorder. Y'all see, I had to say that real slow because those S's.
And I'm not supposed to have y'all laughing at me because I have a speech impediment. Okay.
So we're not going to say Narcissistic Personality Disorder anymore. We're going to say some short version of it or NPD.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Save the tongue and the throat.
And the teeth.
And the laugh.
Yes, that too.
So my question to you ladies, do you remember the first time you came in contact with someone who had traits of narcissism?
Personally or professionally?
Ooh.
I didn't even break it down like that, Dr. Wong.
I just want to know how I need to answer.
Let's see. Let's say personally.
Personally. I do, but I didn't recognize that that's what it was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
That came years and years and years later.
Mm-hmm.
But I do.
How old were you?
Late teens.
Okay. Was it a romantic relationship or a platonic relationship?
It was some version of romantic.
Something like a something.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, thinking back, definitely now, with this adult brain, I can totally see the gaslighting and all of that kind of stuff. But, when you 17, 18, you really barely know anything about life at that point. For some people. Now, of course, some people have more experience than others, but for the most part, your average Joe teenager, you don't know how to look out for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would agree.
Yeah. I would say, probably a cousin of mine. Mm-hmm. Now, much like you were saying, I didn't know. Mm-hmm. This was one of my favorite cousins. Let me say one of, because that way they won't know which one I'm talking about. And classic traits like boom, 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 boom. Mm-hmm. Center of attention. It's all about me. I'm the too much.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, now as an adult, same thing. It's still going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like,
Gotcha.
At what point are you going to grow up person?
Mm-hmm.
See how I didn't gender them at all?
Very slick.
And I would have to say for me, I was an adult. Mostly I didn't grow up around my extended family.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't either.
So I wouldn't be around them enough to have known. But as far as like when I became an adult and I was able to recognize it, it was definitely at the unnamed place that you all know, well, you two know, that I used to work at.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that was when I first realized, like, this is some real sick stuff going on up here. But if you know the kind of people that I worked around, you would understand how it could be that way. And then I think my second would be in church.
I didn't even think about them people. But it's accurate.
Yes.
I'm not even going to go down that path in case any of them listen to us.
Okay.
That's why I'm going to just stop it there. Church.
Yeah,
Brethren and sistren.
Yes.
Yeah. Professionally, definitely have very similar, the place that shall remain unnamed that, Dr. Wall and I used to work at.
One day we just going to say it. Not right now, but one day.
Maybe about 10, 15 years down the road.
Or if they close down.
Even
That
better. I think professionally, absolutely. That's the first time that I encountered a supervisor with maybe, I don't know if it's
Can it be more
NPD.
than one?
Yeah.
Oh, my whole team.
Yeah.
Most
Because
most of them.
NPD, BD,
Yeah,
all of the
there was a
above.
whole bunch.
BPD, I mean.
We for us psych heads out here, we just gonna say personality NOS. So that was my first encounter working under a system like that, and we talked about this, throwback to It's Just a Job. We talked about having work PTSD and being under a system like that, constantly feeling on edge and like there's something wrong with you, or that you're the quote unquote crazy person, but you're
Gaslighting.
Yeah, but you're probably one of the few logical people in the whole space.
Yes.
It's very off-putting, and it took realistically, I'd say probably a good solid year of to recover from, being in that place. And if I saw this person now, I probably would still flip them the bird today, but it would come from a place of
The audacity.
You didn't stop me.
Versus I'm angry at you and, you hurt me and, that kind of way.
Yeah.
But now it's I just don't respect you. That's really where it would come from now.
Well, y'all know I don't even refer people to that place.
Yes.
And that Dr. Strickland and my, past employer, we still get a lot of people from them.
Weirdly enough.
And they be like, yeah, I didn't like such and such and such. You know what I mean? And it felt really, and I always say narcissistic. And they're like, that's what it was. So
yeah, it's funny when you think about, narcs, the shortened version of narcissism,
non-substance abuse.
Yes. Non-substance abuse, not narcotics.
That's why I'm going to stick with NPD.
But when you come from underneath the umbrella and, the smoke finally clears, it is such a revealing, eye-opening experience and shocking. Because being a clinician, you think how come I didn't notice this, or how come I didn't, and then you start getting into all the whys and whatnots and woulda, coulda, shouldas and stuff. But then you have to come back and realize that you're a human being just like everybody else, who's subject to being manipulated and subject to being taken advantage of, just like any other person. It doesn't matter that you're a clinician, and all the traits and the signs and the blah, 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 blahs.
Yeah, because you don't think that it would ever happen to you, because you would know the signs and what it looks like. And it really just goes off. It's just like doctors who, tell their patients not to smoke and they smoke. They don't think they'll get cancer, lung cancer or something like that. It's for other people. It's for layman's people. Yeah.
It's a slow, insidious process.
So we decided to go with this topic because it's been a hot topic in the medias.
Boy, I hear the word narcissist.
Yes.
So much now.
So it's the new catchphrase, or one of the new catchphrases.
Yeah, it was ADHD, then it was autism, and now it's narcissist. Well, no, it was bipolar there for a while.
And borderline.
And borderline. Now we've moved to narcissist.
Well, you can think KS for that, because we're not going to say that man's name on this
No.
podcast.
Yeah. I would definitely say within the Black community,
Mm-hmm.
yes, this has contributed heavily to, and I would say a lot of the like red pill, manosphere, and even though the pink pill is a specific podcast, but just like the pink pill nature, hypergamy, like this has really created a huge discussion about narcissism.
Yeah. The whole high value conversations that keep going on.
Yeah. So we said, hey,
let's go and jump on this bandwagon
from a mental health perspective, because a lot of this is definitely based in financial and relationship, which of course y'all know us, so y'all know we're gonna talk about relationships, but we wanted to give y'all some more
history and so we want to start with like the science part of it, and then kind of give you a little bit of the history. We're not going to bombard you with the history, but just kind of give you some pointers to even how it came to be known as NPD.
Sounds good to me. So, we of course said we was going to get into the science, but we got to take it way back in the time. And pretty much a lot of the stuff that we have in psychology and a lot of the social sciences is based in mythology, Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and it kind of starts from there. And now I'm not going to dive into the whole depths of this story, but the term narcissist or narcissism came from the Greek, I guess, would you call him a demigod?
We're going to go with a demi.
A demi?
Because he ain't the tops.
Okay.
True that.
Narcissus. Ooh, Lord. Gotta enunciate
these Latin words.
Boy. So the story goes that his mother was told that he would live a long, prosperous life and be, all these great things would happen as long as he doesn't recognize himself. So okay, just kind of like Achilles, as prophecies go. Of course, you know how it's going to end.
Of course.
So Narcissus, has the eyes for these individuals, one named Echo and the second oh man,
broke his heart.
Amenias. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Amanias.
There you go. Because I'm like, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know I like all things.
Yeah.
Fictional.
So Narcissus was not able to obtain the love of these two individuals. So this is the short and abridged version of this. Went to the water's edge and looked upon himself in the water and fell in love
with himself.
And fell so in love that he stayed there until he died. Now, the one thing that broke his heart the most is that Echo, was a nymph. And if you know anything about nymphs and where the word nymphomaniac comes from, just imagine being rejected and not being able to receive the love of a nymph.
I mean, she had put that thing on him.
Right.
Mythologically speaking.
So then, ergo, we get into the more scientific version of narcissism, but as far as where that specific word came from, originated from Greek mythology.
Okay, and so then we have Havelock Ellis, who is from Croydon in Surrey, England. And
let me not do that, because y'all know they be bad. The accents be bad.
And his contribution to psychology was human sexuality and sex education and women's rights. So he first described narcissism, I was going to say NPD, narcissism as the preoccupation of one's own sexual body. And this started in 1898. And then,
long time ago.
That was long. Yet not.
Yes, that's true. So then, so psychoanalytic is a theoretical orientation, and so you have people who fall up under the psychoanalytical theoretical orientation, then you have people that follow CBT, you know, and just all of the other theoretical orientations. So after Ellis coined it, other psychoanalysts then jumped on board and described it as a characteristic of vanity and self-love that is not exclusively sexual.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the infamous Sigmund Freud.
Ooh. Man.
And that's a whole other situation because that man had a lot of issues.
Yes.
He is considered the father of psychology, unfortunately. But we learned from him what to do and what not to do.
Now, the thing about it is his theories did make sense in certain aspects, like the id, ego, and super ego and stuff like that. It did make sense.
He just had some Robert Kelly vibes, and he was an addict as well as some other things. You know.
Yeah. But yes, but so he then had a publication of a book called On Narcissism, and that he talked about narcissistic people experiencing feelings of low self-worth and low self-esteem. Then we continue to go through the history with Kohut. Now, I know these names are not familiar to you all, and that's fine. We just want to give you a little bit of the history. Kohut was a self-psychologist. He then talked about how your childhood was a part of how you develop the NPD. So he said that the failure of parents to empathize with their child is the way people develop that personality trait. And then we have, I'm going to do one more in this Kernberg. I'm trying to say that fast. And his was the emphasis on aggression and conflict. Okay.
So if y'all can kind of see a theme, like it has compiled over the century and a half that it's kind of been in existence. So it wasn't just all at one moment. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's expound on that. Oh, okay, let's expound on that. Many of the things that y'all have asked us to talk about in this season of our show has a basis in something sexual, because I don't know what was going on with the men folk, but they real focused on sex, and that's how a lot of it originated, and then it expounded to the psychosocial, which is psychological, social, emotional, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and the thing about it, if you notice about psychology, it has a foundation, and then people come after and continue to build on it. And then so now we have another add-on to NPD, which is a mental condition in which people have an inflated sense of their own importance, a deep need for excessive attention and admiration, troubled relationships, and a lack of empathy for others. But behind this mask of extreme confidence lies a fragile self-esteem that's vulnerable to the slightest criticism.
I like that sync that we had in there. You know, I think, you know, one of the things that people have to understand about narcissism or NPD is that it's something that's pervasive, and it's likely not going to change.
No.
You know, this is about your personality, and if you have any personality traits, it's not impossible to change these things, but it is very difficult and requires a lot of insight to be able to do so.
And a level of dedication that most people really don't want to continue. It's kind of like what I've talked about, me being an introvert. Like, I can't change me being an introvert. I can do things that can offset my level of introversion, but I will still always be an introvert. And so in order for me to have relationships, I have to adjust, because I can't be like, we just gonna lay in the bed all day and talk, because y'all gonna be looking like, I want to go somewhere, you know. So that's a lesser version of what we're talking about, but any personality disorder is the innate parts of you, and so it is it's hard to keep up the good fight when you know that these are possible traits and things that you have that are not healthy for relationships.
And then just remember that, as Dr. Strickland was just saying, the pervasive part, just because someone is that way toward you, it doesn't mean, or it could mean, that they're like that with everyone in their life, whether it's social, whether it's occupational, just interacting with other people. And a lot of times we get the question, I think, my friend or my husband is narcissistic. Mm-hmm. Just because a person has the traits, it doesn't mean that they have the disorder. But if they have the disorder, they do have the traits.
Yeah, I think that's the part that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to psychology. It's not just you slapping a title on a group of symptoms. You literally have a certain amount of time when it needs to onset or show up. Mm-hmm. You have to have a certain number of things.
And this one is 5 out of the 9.
5 out of the 9. So it bothers me when people do that. Like the common one, like Dr. Strickland said earlier, bipolar. That boy bipolar. Why? Because his moods are changing like everybody else's.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I was mad one minute and then I was sad the next minute.
The most I can give you is rapid cycling. I'm sorry. Like, you're not going to get bipolar.
The most I can give you is living life.
Yes. Yeah. But I'm saying if you needed a diagnosis.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's.
But I do want to put a disclaimer out there that we're talking about this, but please do not take everything that we're talking about and then try to go and say that your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your mom, your dad, your sister, your cousin, your auntie, whatever.
No.
Please don't try to take this information and then go say, well, I heard on
the doctor said.
Right. So this is just information. If you need something much more concrete, then that person whom you think will need to go to a professional, or you should go seek professional advice or counseling from somebody else. But this is not what that purpose is for.
It's a disclaimer before you started listening to this session.
We just throwing it out there again.
Yes.
But speaking about the 5 out of 9, so that people are aware of what if we were going to use criteria, what in the world would they be thinking or looking at?
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be very literal, because anytime you have the DSM,
just know it's the Bible for mental health providers.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so this is the book that we utilize to diagnose people, make sure that the symptoms that they are presenting qualify for the diagnosis they're coming in with or what we think they have. So I'm going to read verbatim out of the book. And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So before you, Dr. Strickland. Dr. Wall starts reading out of DSM-5. So MPD was actually put in the DSM-3 in 1984. I think it's 1984. And they have changed now. We have a DSM-3, we have a DSM-4, we have a DSM-5, and they have changed some of the criteria in each of them.
Yeah. So make sure you get the most up-to-date. You got to search for
version whenever you listen to this.
Yes.
Yes.
So the Narcissistic Personality Disorder 301.81 or F60.81. We getting real.
For our
ICD-10.
For all our associates, that's a different term than intern. Y'all know what we talking about, or our fully licensed people. A pervasive pattern of grandiosity in fantasy or behavior, need for admiration, and lack of empathy, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts, as indicated by 5 or more of the following. So far, they've given us what the pattern of the behaviors are going to look like. It can be in mind, in theory of what they envision, or it can actually be their actual behaviors and what it stems from: the need of admiration, the lack of empathy. It needs to have began early adulthood. You don't diagnose children when it comes to personality disorders, although you have heard us say, they got some cluster B stuff going on, or they got some cluster C, or whatever.
It peeks its head out.
You'd be like, oh, okay, that's a little serial killer. But we're not gonna diagnose them. We're just gonna watch. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So the first one that they list is has a grandiose sense of self-importance, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. So they just, I should get this because I should.
me.
Mm-hmm.
They trying to be a god.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love.
Okay.
Number 3 believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions.
Donkeys and stallions. For any clients that I have that are listening to me that talked about narcissism, they know exactly what I'm talking about.
Number 4 requires excessive admiration. Now, don't be talking about she asked me to tell her she was beautiful once, and that's the excessive. That's not it. This is like consistently every day. Multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5 has a sense of entitlement, which is an unreasonable expectation of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Number 6 is interpersonally exploitative, which means they take advantage of others to achieve their own end goals. And they don't tell nobody. Number 7 is lacks empathy, is unwilling to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. It's just like, what they got to do with me?
This is working for me. What you talking about?
Yeah.
Basically.
That's where that gaslighting be coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Number 8 is often envious of others or believes that others are envious of him or her, and ain't nobody checking for him. They made it up in their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Number 9 shows arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. Now remember, you have to have 5 out of these 9. You can't have 4.5. 3. You have to have 5 or more.
So if it's under 5, this is what we call traits. You have essence of narcissism, but not actual narcissism.
Yes.
Diet narcissism, if you will.
Not diet.
Or flavored water version of narcissism. Essence of lime.
LaCroix.
I was just getting ready to say that as she looked at my water over here. So I did want to talk about the differences, the 2 different types of, well, not 2 different types, but the grandiosity and vulnerable narcissism. Because the grandiosity part is they appear arrogant, pretentious, dominant, self-assured, exhibitionist, or aggressive. And then the vulnerable narcissism may present as overly sensitive, insecure, defensive, anxious about an underlying sense of shame and inadequacy. So a lot of times narcissism can be misdiagnosed. Especially when they come in as the vulnerable narcissism, because it can look like depression
Or anxiety.
Yeah.
And it can be in conjunction with those as well. But typically, when you start seeing somebody, they're going to begin with a lesser diagnosis before they just throw some heavy on you, because you got to build rapport. You got to know the person's life and things of that nature.
Well, and for the therapist, we tend to realize, okay, this treatment ain't working. What is going on here?
Yeah. I think it takes time. It takes time to really weed out what's real, what's not. And as a therapist, you're only getting a piece of a story. Every clinician knows that when you're being told something in session, you're not getting 100%. No. You're not getting 100%. And you're also getting this person's interpretation of what happened. So, there's some truth in it. And then there's also some, not even lies. It's just kind of like self-deception kind of stuff going on there.
That's why when it comes to the personality disorder, diagnoses, I always tell my clients at that point, because a lot of them come in and be like, well, I was diagnosed with borderline personality or something like that. I always tell them, let me observe you for a little while before I give you that diagnosis, because sometimes it can look it could be something else. You know, it could be that, but I just want to observe. Let me see.
Man, narcissistic. I love them. Well, you don't, but it helps if you do.
So with that, I know we wanted to also talk about some of the symptoms that are shown with narcissists. What are some of the top ones that y'all typically notice?
Well, of course, you know, the grand poobah is grandiosity.
Yes.
Lots of showboating, peacocking. You know, like, hey, look at my nice pretty feathers, even though when I put them down I look real ugly.
And they scared of that real ugly.
It's that Prince Charming effect. Shrek version. Real Prince Charming, and he's really not a good person. Like, that's a classic case of Prince Charming was actually a narcissist in Shrek.
Another thing is sensitivity. So I don't think that gets talked about a lot with people that are on this spectrum being very sensitive.
Yes.
You know, because the outside looks so showboatish and like they've got it all together and everything's, you know, all pristine. But the second you say, oh, you got a little something right there on you, and the whole thing just kind of comes crashing down. So they're very sensitive to any type of even perceived criticism, whether you were actually being critical or not. But if I think you were, then, you know, forgive you for pointing it out.
Forgive you.
Because it's about you. It ain't.
Right.
I'm perfect.
Right. Did you have one? You have one ready? Okay.
Monopolizes conversations and tends to have a demeaning or belittling look on others.
Ooh,
yeah.
Lots of CEOs end up and when we say CEOs, not just Fortune 5 or Fortune 100 companies, we're talking, you know, the bike shop owners. Or, you know, this could be small business owners. It's about the having power.
Or perceived power.
And it's also police officers are big in that category as well.
Oh. It's so much going on in the world right now, and we could all use some extra support. At Balance Beacon, we offer counseling services for individuals, couples, families, and groups. If you're in Texas, give us a call at 214-396-6503 or visit our website at www.balancebeacon.com for more information. So, you know, one thing that I was thinking about this, and this is not in my notes, but just as you said it about monopolizing, I think a distinction to be made here is people on the spectrum can oftentimes look very narcissistic.
Tell them which spectrum we're
I'm sorry.
about.
Sorry. The autism spectrum.
Yes.
And what would have typically had been called back in the day Asperger's, even though that does not
exist anymore.
Scientifically exist, it socially exists in the lexicon, but it's not a diagnosis anymore. But I do think that people that fall within that category can look very narcissistic because of the lack of social awareness and mirroring. And if you don't know how to mirror somebody, you may over talk and be very, verbose and explain a whole bunch and take conversations by storm. And also that logic that can come with people that are some individuals on the spectrum, that kind of, I know it all because I'm an expert or whatnot in this particular subject. I think that some people can have a difficult time making that distinction.
Yeah.
I know typically when I see someone that is on the autism spectrum versus narcissistic, what I normally see is a little bit more quirkiness. in them a little bit more oddity or nuance in their behaviors, versus someone who is narcissistic. They actually do a great job of mirroring you in the beginning. It just eventually falls off because, and we'll talk about this in a later session, is you fall in love with yourself when you're with a narcissist. You're not falling in love, which we think is clumsy, with them. You're falling in love with you because they're mirroring everything that you're doing to reel you in.
And that's why I was one of the you said, what was your question? The characteristic, trait, symptom that
all of them words.
Yes. That I was going to add to what you ladies just said was empathy. But the thing about it is I'm torn, because on one end they lack empathy, but then on the other end it's like they do have empathy in the beginning because they mirror you to know what they need to say, what they need to do in order to get you to be drawn into
data
them.
gathering.
And I mean, narcissists are very much so the end justifies the means. So if I need to fake like I really like you like that, then I'll do that. Versus, okay, let's build this thing together and we form something as a unit. No, it's just like, I need to catch you. Like, I need your wall to come down, your boundaries to come down, so I can just change it all up.
Yeah.
Which is why research says that a lot of, with the empathy part, a lot of the percentage of men is higher than women.
It's 75%.
I thought it was 80 to 20.
It might have went up.
I don't know.
It might have went up.
It is rising.
That's high enough.
Yes.
I think mine was like 2016, the study, which, that's, they, it's rising right now because the pandemic is on the rise. Struggling, making people struggle.
Man.
Yeah. So, but you can, if we look at the empathy part, we can understand why it's high in men, because men don't get, or boys to men do not get that piece of being emotionally connected, intelligent.
It's not socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about this before in various capacities, that girls are reared differently. And of course, we're talking very stereotypically here, and generalizing to some extent, but girls are reared differently than boys. We are pushed to be much more verbal, much more engaging, eye contact, polite,
intuitive.
And when we begin to act outside of that, we are reprimanded, whereas boys, they are praised for acting,
encouraged, and to be in competition with folks. That it. I don't know why people think those two things are going to go together once people become adults, because we need to rear our kids pretty much the same on both sides, you know, so that people can effectively adapt and grow and be healthy. But that's a conversation for another session. Another one that I think is important to discuss is the having the inability or unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of others. It's like, and that's the gaslighting or breadcrumbing, those sort of things that kind of come up when you are dealing with a narcissist. Like,
it's the one who has infidelity. They steal money, and it's like, well, what's the problem? Because it's working for me.
It's like, you should have did what I needed you to do,
right?
Or you could have just left me.
Or you could have talked about it with me.
Yeah, or quit your job.
Yes.
Any of those
you need to do.
Yeah. Well, but it works.
It does.
And that's the problem. It works for those individuals. So they understand people probably better than most. If we're going to go in the personality range, the people that probably understand individuals the most are going to be antisocial personality people and narcissists.
Yep.
Because they're as out of tune as they are. They are observant. Super in tune with what they need and how to get it. So that requires them to be observant, and observant does not equal empathetic.
Right. And so that with them being that observant like that, they know how to study a person to be able to get what they want from that person, from that situation, from that circumstance, from that environment. which is why you have a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them have high positions, you know, like we were just saying, like doctors, police officers, judges, you know, they have that thing.
And another end of that, we're talking about the extreme end, is you find that a lot of serial killers are actually narcissists.
Yes.
As well as some other personality disorders. But you do see, we were talking about this individual before we started the session, Ted Bundy.
Yeah. He's a known narcissist.
And loved being in the spotlight. He was like, please find them. Like, it's just... You just looking at people like, did you really have to go that far?
Oh yeah. If you've ever watched his if you've ever watched his trial, when he was finally caught, and how because he defended himself.
He did. He didn't do too bad of a job.
He did not.
He did because
considering not being a lawyer.
Yeah.
But he defended himself, which ergo.
Because I'm the best.
Yeah, of course I'm gonna do.
No one's gonna defend me like me.
Who's gonna do it better? But you know, just being that very arrogant, just even towards the judge who has the highest position in that room. You can just see, if you ever want to see somebody in real time, like what that actually really looks like, there is a series on Netflix. I think it's called the Ted Bundy Tapes. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
But if you want to see like what does this look like in real life versus a TV movie version of what narcissism can look like, I would suggest people go check that out.
Get your mind right though, because you will be seeing him. Yeah. So, I mean, and the thing that always sticks out to me about that particular documentary is his smile. He always had this, he was a little crazy behind the eyes.
A little Cheshire cat.
Cheesing the entire time. I think this man is on trial for unaliving many people. So he's smiling. This is not the time to smile.
Yeah.
It is for me, because y'all need to see how perfect I am.
I mean, he almost got away with it, so that would be accurate.
So when we talk about, you know, narcissists in general, you know, most of them are very, we've talked about charming and all of these things, but a lot of them can be very good looking. So that makes it much more difficult, you know, because of, we haven't specifically talked about like attractiveness and privilege when it comes to like, I hate saying pretty.
Say that 4 times in a row.
Okay. I don't like saying pretty privilege because in my mind, it reduces it down to just women. But when we talk about attractiveness, that can make it much more difficult for people to also see what's really happening with narcissists, because you get awed by what you're looking at. So then the package looks great. The words coming out of their mouth look great.
And they're usually good in bed.
So then you get bamboozled, hoodwinked, you know, all of those things into this false sense of security. And then one day here it comes. You know, the hammer comes down on you because of the expectation, because you now need to serve the need that they needed you to serve.
And so what happens is you begin to enable, regardless of the relationship. And we'll talk about that later, but you begin to enable because you've been awed by all of this that Dr. Strickland just described.
Just to backtrack just a half a piece, attractive advantage.
Thank you.
I got you. I had to look up the synonyms because it was bothering my spirit.
I know. I was like, I hate saying pretty privilege. I had to get that.
I know.
Had to get that out slow.
Y'all, words are hard today. It's okay though.
I don't know what's going on with the words today.
Because like I said, I feel like it just reduces it down to women, but men also have an attractive advantage as well. Which, if we're going back with that example, he had that. You know, he was an attractive man. You know,
for that time, y'all, don't go look at this documentary and be like, what was we talking about in the 70s? Not 2021.
You know, things change. You know, Burt Reynolds was a big thing back in his day.
Sure was.
He probably wouldn't be a big thing today. Okay.
Somebody were like, who's that?
Exactly. Like Burt Reynolds. Ask your mama. or your grandmama.
Exactly.
Okay. So any other ones that you had on your list?
Not really, other than the insisting on having everything that's the best. You know, I have to
have the best car, the house,
or
the
appear
most
to
attractive wife or husband.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to make a distinction here was a difference between arrogance, conceited, and just confident.
Yeah.
Yeah, because those are different.
Yeah, and people like to use those words interchangeably, and definition wise they probably, like, if you take the like root of those words, they could be interchangeable, but when we talk about connotation and semantics, they're not necessarily interchangeable. You know, when you think of arrogance and conceitedness, there's a higher level that kind of comes with that versus confidence.
Yeah, I would say with confidence, confident people are humble. They don't have to overtalk you. They don't have to outshare you. They don't have to out have you. They if you talk about wanting a Jaguar, I don't have to say, well, I want a Maybach or something. You know, I don't.
A what? Maybach.
Yeah, a Maybach, a Lamborghini or whatever. Like, I don't have to out want you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybach is a pen. Y'all see where my head is. I want that pen.
Okay. We said words are hard today.
It's okay. They understand.
But yes, I completely agree with you. And, you know, and that's why I think that there's such a fine line between those, you know, arrogance and confidence, because they can both seem showy if taken out of confidence. Lord have mercy. Taken out of context. We promise, guys, we have not been drinking.
Not today.
It's just,
I don't know.
I'm
what
drinking
is going on.
purified drinking water. That's what
And I'm drinking a LaCroix.
And I got a cincha.
Sponsorship shout out, please.
Okay.
Anybody.
We looking. But we promise that we've had no libations of that sort today.
I do have the definitions if y'all want them.
Yes.
Sure.
Arrogance is exaggerating or disposed to exaggerate one's own worth or importance, often by an overbearing manner, showing an offensive attitude of superiority proceeding from or characterized by arrogance. And then conceit is excessively proud of oneself or vain. And then confidence is the feeling or belief that one can rely on self or something, firm trust in oneself.
So the other two are like the, you know, evil stepsisters
To Cinderella.
of confidence.
Yeah.
You know, I can see there are situations where you might need to show conceit or arrogance, but as we've talked about before, anything taken to an extreme is unhealthy.
Yeah. And that's, we've seen people before who they don't like to, praise themselves or boast about their accomplishment because they're afraid that they would look arrogant. And it's nothing wrong with praising yourself for achieving something or buying something, or it's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just the extreme of it is when it becomes, it's nothing wrong with that. It's just what if you decide to do it and if you are NPD, so, or have traits.
Yeah. So speaking of kind of, traits and things that can kind of come along with, my brain is thinking like 5 different diagnoses. Narcissism. What have y'all seen has been like, as far as other diagnoses, like comorbid or co-occurring with those?
Well, y'all know I've seen substance abuse. A lot of times when people come into treatment for substance abuse, you begin to see layers of what's going on with them. And one of the, educational pieces that we used to have to do for a presentation at where I used to work was Inferiority Complex.
Ooh, we never talked about inferiority. We talked about imposter syndrome a little bit,
which is similar, but not quite the same.
Not quite. That goes with that personal narrative of like a sense of inadequacy. I just don't measure up.
Yeah. Because that's the real thing when you think about narcissism, is that it's housed in superiority, but it's really feelings of insufficiency. That's why they're loud and wrong most times.
Loud and wrong.
Love it.
Choose one. Also, something that you see often, and we said this earlier, is depression and anxiety kind of go hand in hand with that. And for people who don't really understand depression and anxiety, they are extremes of lesser emotions, so like sadness is the lower level of depression. Anxiety can be the lower level of worry, or the higher level of worry, so I think you have to make sure you understand that, so you know what your mind ends up doing in these very extreme situations, because our minds can only take so much of the same thing before there's a break or something like that.
Absolutely.
I would say another one is bipolar. The grandiosity of the mania and the grandiosity of the MPD typically collide. So, when we see people that's diagnosed with bipolar, or possibly, we have to look at both to make sure.
The fireworks.
Bipolar is a very common one in a lot of personality disorders. You'd be like, wait, you're running. Is it the mania or is it the personality? I can sit. Calm yourself.
Yeah, I think, man, it almost might be worth it to do just a session or even like a mini session just on bipolar and just talking about giving more accurate information about what that looks like. So y'all let us know if that's something y'all interested in learning a little bit more about, so that we can give you a little bit more of a deep dive.
And for people who are into the entertainment industry and have saw that kind of be a hot topic, people like Chris Brown, people like Kanye West, and other
Martin
people,
Lawrence, back
Martin
in the day.
Lawrence,
Mariah Carey.
They are people who have more recently, except for Martin Lawrence, but more recently come out and discuss the fact that they have bipolar disorder and how it has affected them. And now we're not getting too in depth, but bipolar has two sides: bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and as well as NOS and some other things. But
we can talk about that if y'all just let us know if y'all want to talk about it.
Yeah. Another one that a lot of people don't think about is eating disorders. They don't realize that the malnutrition, what that does to the mind, and you be out here doing weird stuff. Think about when you get hangry.
Oh man.
That is for real. Like, I experienced that myself.
That needs to be in the DSM. Because, baby.
Because your body cannot handle that. And so if we're at a regular level of hunger, not even a real one, like we're not out here starving, but a regular level of hunger.
I'm telling y'all.
Imagine when you've been deprived for days, weeks, months, years.
Y'all, I promise y'all, if they put that in the DSM, I'm going to have a diagnosis. So they don't
we
need
all
to put
have
that
a diagnosis. I've had
Straight
moments, and my mom can probably attest to this. I remember I was looking for a building for my studio way back in the day, long time ago. And we had been going all over my little hometown. And I was like, I was about to cry. I was like, I'm so hungry. She was like, oh, we got to go get you a burger or something. You need a morsel.
Yeah, that
especially
reminds
when you do
me.
that little dance when you're trying to get some food. You be like,
Will you show us? Will you show us?
Yeah, and that reminds me of, I don't know if y'all have seen that, I think it was a Facebook clip where this little boy and his little sister was sitting at the table and she was crying and he was like, have you taken a nap yet? She said, no, I don't need a nap. And he was like, yes, you do.
Yeah. I did it. Well, you need one.
Yes.
That was so cute, but it's so true.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the only other one that kind of pops up a lot is other personality disorders, because there are some similarities because of the grandiose,
the BPD,
the paranoia,
yes,
the paranoia,
over sexualization, because that's part of it being charming,
histrionic.
Yes, so other personality disorders can kind of pop up.
So the ones that we specifically listed out is borderline personality disorder, histrionic personality disorder, And we'll talk about this one in the next session. Is antisocial personality disorder when it's mixed with narcissistic personality disorder, because that shows up a little bit differently, than the other two.
Yeah, definitely. Now, in y'all's opinion, are there any specific causes or complications that can scoot this diagnosis on along or make it more pronounced? Like, what are y'all's opinions of that?
You mean, wait, ask this question one more time.
Are there any specific things like complications or causes that y'all have either witnessed or read about that y'all feel it like makes it more pronounced or makes it come up in an individual?
Gotcha. Okay.
I would definitely say emotionless parents, or either emotionless or basically the extremes. Too emotional or no emotion at all. It kind of creates that emotional island, and I have to take care of myself, so then I can only rely on me, which then when taken and blossomed out of control can lead to narcissism.
Yeah.
And then I would add too that it's still with parenting, those that put the pressure to achieve and not pay attention to the emotional intelligence or the emotional growth, but they put more emphasis on being a great athlete or getting
being
schoolwork
better than
done.
everybody.
Oh yeah. High IQ individuals a lot of times can end up becoming have at least traits of narcissism, because they are so intelligent that it's hard for them to relate to other people. And then a superiority kind of complex can be developed in there. And again, not checked, can become narcissism.
Definitely. I mean, I was looking at some of the statistics when it comes to that. Like 6% of the people who are narcissists tend to be forensic analysts. 20% of the people in the military are narcissists. And not that this is a shocker because we've been talking so much about medical health, but 17% of first year medical students are narcissists. So imagine how many of them go on to be doctors, surgeons.
Because they definitely have a God complex.
Psychiatrists.
Yes. Yes. Psychiatrists.
Hate to put us under there like that. But
now, what I will say, we're not trying to like
no shade,
seclude or exclude ourselves, because the personality type that we normally see in our field is borderline.
Yeah. Wow.
So we're not excluding nobody, but we just saying
we don't
certain.
talk about that.
No. Yeah. Get off of that, Dr. Wall.
Well, that's not what we talking about today anyway. I think another one that can be a cause is genetics. Like, things run in our DNA, like we've talked about in several sessions. It doesn't mean that you can't overcome these things just because it does run in your DNA, but you have to be a bit more intentional.
And your environment has to be
conducive.
Thank you.
Got you
it was
back.
delayed.
Yeah, this is one of those nature-nurture situations. If I had to guess, I would say nurture probably plays a slightly bigger role here.
Oh yeah.
I won't say it's this huge gap, but I would say what you experience does shape you a lot. However, the way some of those generational kind of legacies predispose you to being much more susceptible to becoming that way.
And I know we didn't say this in the beginning, but I did want to give this statistical data, is that 0.5% of the U.S. population, or 1 in 200 people, which is still a lot, are typically narcissistic or have narcissistic personality disorder. So it's not a huge stat, but when you think about how many people pre-COVID that were alive, and then you make those calculations, that still is a huge number of people. And then they typically, like we said, get into these positions of power. And so you're going to feel them. It's the trickle down effect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you will. You'll feel unhealthy.
And we've talked about manipulation before. So if you go back and listen to that session as well, where we talked about the different types of manipulation, this is a good cousin to that session.
Yes.
You know, because that will go through what it will look like with narcissists in kind of a real sense. And here, you know, we're definitely talking a little bit more specific about them, but the manipulation session will definitely show you these are the behaviors that you will experience likely, either being in a relationship with them, working for them, working with them, being friends with them, something like that.
Yeah. So I know we've talked a lot about what NPD is, how it can kind of show up, the symptoms and different things like that. I also want to make sure we give our interns like some treatment options and what would be possible things that we work on in prognosis.
Yep.
So one of the treatments that I read that work slightly is short-term psychoanalytic therapy, which when I read it, I was like, that is so contradicting because psychoanalytic therapy is long.
Years.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think technically long therapy is something that is going to have to go with a personality disorder or someone who has a diagnosis that's going to continuously come up.
So I think the reason why they were saying short term is because they are likely to involuntarily terminate.
Yes.
Because they don't know how to develop a relationship with the therapist because it can't be like how they do in their personal life.
Or they think it's not working.
Or, yeah.
And how dare you act like the expert?
And how dare you think you know about me?
And just the amount of time it takes to develop insight. You know, for somebody that with narcissism, it's not impossible, but it is a slow crawl on developing any type of insight into themselves.
Yeah. And I'll say out of the people that I personally have had that have had NPD, I've only had one individual that's like, I really want to change. Please let me know how I can be a better individual for myself, for my wife, my family. I really want to change. That has happened once out of the many years that I've been doing this. Typically it's begrudgingly.
Yeah, because usually they don't have that empathetic piece. And that's one of the key things, is according to the research that I did.
Yes.
That's one of the key things that they have to learn so that all the other things can begin to decrease.
Yeah, definitely. I know some of the things that are typically worked on when you have an individual battling NPD. You know, you have to work on improving their collaboration with different individuals, coworkers, peers, significant others, family, because collaboration is not something that they do.
Nope.
It's like
They're
my
the
way or
smartest
no way.
person in the room.
Or accountability.
Yes. The other thing is you work on maintaining your personal relationships and not throwing people away when they don't do what you want them to do.
Because they quick to cut somebody off. Well, let me back up. They're quick to cut somebody off, but still try to keep you though.
Oh, yeah.
I want to have at least one little hook in you.
Yeah.
Just one.
It's like that book, I Hate You, Don't Leave Me. I know it's for borderline, but still.
Same concept. Absolutely.
Pulling you back. Yes. The next one is recognizing their strengths and potential so that they can tolerate criticism or failures, which is hard. That's hard on a regular day, let alone you having an NPD day. So, you know, it's hard to understand just because I didn't do well, that doesn't make me less of a person or a bad person or whatever, depending on what you did.
Well, you know, they thrive off of validation.
Yeah.
Of other people, of other people's praises of them.
Yeah. And so when it's not praising, it has to be critical. When constructive criticism is good. Feedback is good. The next one is to understand and manage their feelings, because what is an emotion?
And that's one of the most difficult.
I was like, that's probably the hardest part.
That's why we get them feeling charts out, because we don't know what we getting when we do assessment on someone.
So you just flew all the way off the handle. Gotcha.
So how did you come to that conclusion? I don't know. I just thought it, and it was what was real. Oh, okay.
And that's what that example just made. It's like, okay, well, are you bipolar? Are you MPD? I'm what?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why it takes time.
Two more. The next one is cope with any related self-esteem issues, and then set realistic goals for themselves.
You said set realistic or
unrealistic?
I was going to say, wait a minute, unrealistic.
No,
wait, where's that
they
come
already
from?
got those.
Yes. Okay.
Down pat.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree with all that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Very helpful. So you were saying in prognosis?
Yeah. Prognosis is if you get someone who is willing, it's actually good. Kind of like what I was saying with the individual. But they really got to be in a place to receive the information. And this is one of those personality disorders that
they're less likely to come to therapy.
Guarded.
They're extremely guarded.
Yes.
The prognosis is guarded.
Yeah. So you have like NPD and antisocial on this end. They're like, whatever. But you have the borderlines. I will come every day, every hour, whatever you need me to do.
Until you say something I don't like, and then it's death to you.
And you're firstborn.
Okay.
So we out here cursing.
I curse you. They doing like Celie did in The Color Purple when she
had them 2 fingers.
Yeah. Everything you think about is going to crumble.
Not today, Satan.
But then next session it's like, I'm so sorry. I don't know what got over me.
So that's the thing. That I think that's why the research on NPD is so kind of light, because they're less likely to come to therapy. If they come to therapy, it's because they think it's depression or anxiety or something else.
Yeah.
Or they've been pushed.
They like, I don't want to lose X, Y, and Z, so let me go ahead and get it together. In respect to what we were talking about with therapy, I posted something the other day, and this kind of just stood out. I think the reason people think their partners can be their therapist is because they think therapy is just talking about their feelings. Therapy is a treatment plan. Psychology is a science. Having someone listen to you vent is not the same as creating a plan to heal trauma. And so with that being said, that is the importance of continuing therapy in any situation, but especially when you have a personality disorder. Like, things are going to continuously come up, and a lot of them tend to be self-inflicted because we are dealing with your personality.
And so the part of the treatment plan is us helping you to manage those symptoms, because it's not like you're going to be able to get rid of them, because like Dr. Wall just said, that's a part of you, but what we do is help you manage them.
Yeah,
definitely.
And don't be afraid of it.
That's that right there.
You know, like when you actually tell the narcissistic person, like, okay, so you're a narcissist.
No, I'm not.
You know, just and what people think that word means, and it's like, no.
And if you think about the careers of people that we just said it is, I mean, you know, judges, police, you know,
positions of power.
They're not gonna want to hear that, and they're not gonna want it in their record.
No.
That is very true.
But it ain't nothing to run from.
When you run, that's when you actually end up having more problems. If you face some of these things head on with appropriate help, life tends to be a bit easier.
Yeah.
And you have to do the work. When you if you do decide to go to therapy, you have to do the work, or you're going to think that therapy is not working because you're not doing what it is that you're talking about in therapy.
Yeah. Is there anything else that kind of comes up for y'all when you think about NPD, or, you know?
Well, NPD can be a significant predictor for unliving.
Yeah.
Unaliving yourself. Yeah.
Especially, we talked about sensitivity. So once that ego has been shattered, especially if it's on something that was significant to them, they can be very impulsive. And just as we know about, taking and self-deleting, men tend to be much more impulsive and
lethal.
And with the means by which they do this. So if that part of them is, what's the word I'm looking for?
Threatened.
Thank you. Because I was going to say tarnished, but I was like, I feel like that's not the right word. Threatened significantly, then yes, it makes it much more, the risk is higher for them.
And the thing about the way these types of situations come about or thoughts come about is that, they may get fired from their job. They may experience some sort of domestic situation. They may start having financial problems or even health related problems.
Yeah. There's a shame component to, MPD, many of the personality disorders, and they don't want to be seen as less than. And in reality, that doesn't equate to less than, but that's a conversation for another time. But society has really jacked us up with what is the highest level of self, because we don't really look at it from a place of healthiness. It's very materialistic.
Oh yeah, the USA has us all messed up because we look at fame, wealth, all of those things of important. Yeah, and it's completely different from like the Western countries, Asia, Eastern. Why? See, my brain is not connecting right now.
Brain is not braining today. But agreed. So since we kind of talked about narcissism in a general sense this session, guys, in the next one, next week, we're going to go through 3 of the main types of narcissism. Now, there are, as the research continues to grow, there are several types of narcissism and how this can kind of show up. But we're going to talk about 3 big ones, kind of like the granddaddy versions of the new information regarding narcissism. So please make sure y'all check that one out if you want a deeper dive into how different they can look.
Yeah. And we also later in the month will be discussing relationships, because we know that is an integral part of what you guys like to hear from us, and we want to make sure that we give you things to look for in a relationship as ways to get out of, or if this works for me or doesn't. And of course, y'all's favorite episode session, MMB is going to have the beautiful, the incomparable Idris Elba in No Good Deeds. Which is a psychological thriller.
I know this is a little different for us.
Yes, but it's right up Dr. Strickland alley. So
yeah. Okay, so we always end off with a quote, and Dr. Wall, what is this one?
Well, this one has no author. It's anonymous, not the person hacking people. It reads, "How many narcissists does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. They don't use light bulbs. They use gaslighting." So funny. We made it funny.
Must be this volume control.
So, okay, interns, process your notes. Be sure to catch us next session and find us on all major platforms at the RePsychled podcast.
If you're a new intern, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Thanks for listening. And remember, we are shifting and reshaping our psyche through healing conversations and connections, one discussion at a time.